And now,
it's 10 a.m.
Let's just get down to it.
And it's time for your sports fix.
Strap yourselves in, folks.
From two guys who have covered the teams you're passionate about for years.
We are professionals.
This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone. Ben Anderson, DJ, sitting in for Jake Scott once again.
I'm back, baby.
At least for 20 minutes.
I didn't really go anywhere.
We've been able to react to a couple of basketball games. 2 times you've been on.
True story.
Pretty nice. When
That
they
was,
space them out like that, that's well timed.
That was an awesome game from the Pacers bench. Spectacular. Mathurin's 27 points in 22 minutes is great. And then 10 points, 5 assists, 5 steals for T.J. McConnell in 15 minutes. Phenomenal. So what PK and I were talking about, and I'm curious your take on this, if I can just tee you up for this.
Please.
We've seen we had a decade of stars drive everything. Get your big three together, right? It starts at the 2008 Olympics, and it dominates through the pandemic. But a new collective bargaining agreement, and now teams that are top-heavy, Phoenix, major disappointment. Denver, got the one title, unable to repeat. Milwaukee got the title, unable to repeat. It might work for you, but if you don't have the bench and the role players, you can't stay on top. Is it going to change the way teams are constructed? And does that pull the Jazz into play in more deals? Because we don't think they have a star, but they do look like they have a handful of competent players who are in their prime. And for a team that's right up against it with a cap, it might be smarter to bet on somebody on a rookie deal and say, there's a little something there. We believe there's more, and we can develop it. So let's go get a guy who's only 1 or 2 years into his NBA career.
Yes. That's what you should do. And that's what the current NBA is telling you to do. And the best general managers, presidents of basketball operations, CEOs now, specifically the Ainges and the Xanax, have to not only recognize that, because by the time they put that together, the rest of the league will have figured that out, but it's also what's the next step. So, the NBA is just a pendulum that swings back and forth.
So there's a couple things. What's the next thing for the league? Where is the league going? But then for your own club, what is the next step? And the Jazz do need some star power.
And that's where it gets really interesting for the Jazz. And again, why I have somewhat repeatedly said I don't actually think the Jazz are as far as a 17-win team away would imply.
No, because they weren't really a 17-win team. They were dumping games.
That's certainly part
25
of it.
For sure, but honestly, I think it's 30, and it might have been a 35-win team.
But I think one of the reasons why you look at this roster and it feels a little scattered and it maybe doesn't really make a whole lot of sense is just because you're right. They do not have those top couple of guys that make everybody align.
Do they have one of the top couple of guys? Because there has been, I am convinced, although I can't prove it, I am convinced. I believe. I may not be able to prove it to you, but I believe that they have really weighed, is Markkanen the second best player on a title team, or is he the third?
Sure.
And I think there's an era where you can say he's third. But I think in the current era we're in, he's second.
He can be. I don't think he does any shot creation, which is difficult. He's not really a playmaker, which is difficult. And you look consistently around the league at who the second best players are. They can create their own shot, and they can create for others. And Lowry doesn't do that, so that's why he's not a Pascal-type player. That's why he's not a Jalen Williams-type player. That's why he's not even a Julius Randle-type player, So I think there are some issues there. The hard part about it is you don't know until you have the number one guy. That's the really hard part to figure out is you don't know where all these guys fit. And if it's going to
take too long to get the number one guy, and not just get him, but develop him to the point that he is the number one, first you have to get someone who can be.
Right.
Probably. This is the process. Get someone who can be and then develop them. Everyone's excited about Cooper Flagg because it looks like that development path is much shorter for him than it would be for most players.
He's just starting at such a high level.
He's right. His starting place is so good. The finish line is much closer.
Right. And it's still going to get better, but to the point where he has to be good enough to be able to win.
Has to get better. He has to go through what Oklahoma City's going through right now. You have to get in the playoffs and you have to get pushed. And they found a way when they were pushed by Denver to get it done. Now they're going to have to find a way against the Pacers. They're down 2-1.
Yeah.
That's a high-stake Game 4 Friday night.
It's really exciting.
Yeah.
It's a fun game.
We're through the, every game's important in a 7-game series, but we're through the preliminaries. There isn't, when you lose that first or second loss, you don't feel the pressure the way you do with that third one.
Yeah. Third one.
Right.
Series might
so
be
by
over.
the time you get to game 4, you know you're feeling it.
We talked about on Monday, the two names we talked about a lot were Caruso and Aaron Wiggins.
And see, everything flips.
And they were...
Right. The guys...
I mean, Aaron Wiggins was an absolute non-factor.
The cliche, role players are better at home than they are on the road, has been so spot on in this series.
Especially in games 2 and 3.
Yeah.
And then last night, Caruso was just terrible in the fourth quarter. He had the big steal against Tyrese Halliburton, but otherwise he was truly awful.
That from that 6-minute mark to the 3-minute mark, I thought it was going to go right to the buzzer. I mean, all night there's 15 ties, and you just figure, well, this is just going to go right down to it, and who's going to hit a shot in the last 30 seconds, or not hit a shot, or miss a free throw. But the Pacers put that run on him from the 6-minute mark to the 3-minute mark, and it was over. And even then, I thought, well, that was a pretty good run, but I don't know if it's over. Mm-hmm. Because there's been so many times you've seen teams get off the deck, and nobody's been better at it than the Pacers. But... man, they did not let Oklahoma City back in.
And that's what the Pacers are best at. First of all, I do think they're just as good as the Thunder are. I don't know if they've got the same full top-end talent. I don't know if...
But that so often defines championship teams that that's the difference. It has, right?
Has.
That's where we started this segment.
Yeah.
Count more on the bench.
And it's amazing to go back. I went back and I rewatched the fourth quarter this morning. And it's like Tyrese Halliburton's not in the game.
He's not averaging...
Shea's not in the game.
And he's not averaging 20 points a game in the series.
These coaches are absolutely willing to ride their bench and give them real significant minutes. And it's T.J. McConnell getting a lot of reps and having to make a couple of plays, or Wiggins and Caruso. And when those guys have made plays, their teams have won.
I always loved it. And the whole time I've been doing... radio now, which, as you like to point out, is most of your life. Thanks for that.
Yep.
But I've had ex-athletes and coaches come on and say, players are better when they know when they're going in and when they're going out.
Yeah.
And the surprises, it messes with them. It messes with their confidence. It messes with the chemistry inside the team. You just can't do it. I'm like, but the guy's hot. He could hit 2 more threes and you can win the game.
Yeah. But they're creatures of routine, creatures of habit.
And it's and through the eras, it doesn't, well, Sloan's like that because he learned it from Frank Layden, and it's on down the line.
But we are seeing, and I've said this a lot too, more and more imperfect teams compete for titles and win titles now than ever before. You just do not have to have this full, complete puzzle. And truthfully, you could even go back to the 2000s Lakers or the Warriors, and they were pretty close, but they weren't even a perfect puzzle, right? They weren't.
You're talking about the worst fourth title team?
All four of their title teams.
Okay.
It was never truly a team without weaknesses.
They never had the real big man that most NBA champions have had. That would be the most obvious thing that they were missing. But they were playing in a different area. The rules have been tweaked, and the players had time to adjust. And shooting the three becomes so much more important that Bogut's not even in the game. It's not what the league calls for anymore.
Right. You don't need him in certain situations.
And the opponents, the only way they could really match up with them was to go with another lineup, and so it just led to he's got to be out so we can match up with them because we can and we'll beat them.
But the Pacers now at this point are more imperfect than those Warriors teams, and I think more imperfect than certainly the Lakers teams of the early 2000s.
So you don't think a 50-win team that was fourth in the East, which is clearly the weaker conference, and was under 500 on New Year's Day, you don't think that's a perfect team, huh?
Certainly not, but they are very well constructed for the playoffs because they have a lot of depth, which generally you would think would be an advantage in the regular season.
And Jerry Sloan would love them because they play with grit.
But I don't think I think some of the best regular season teams, like the Warrior or the Cavaliers would apply for this or would fit into this narrative, are teams that are hard to scout with a day before. Because the truth is, teams aren't getting scouted very well during the regular season,
they
right?
Can't.
You don't have time.
The games come too fast and you don't have time. And this has been true forever. I can remember Stockton talking about it. It's like, and then those days you played teams like the league was smaller. We're talking back when there was like 23 teams in the league. And they were playing teams in their division like 6 times. And he's like, doesn't matter what the regular season was. There's our travel patterns were different. Our days off were different. There was no preparation. Right. And you get to game 3 and everybody who's paying attention can call out every play that the other team runs back when they ran plays instead. Well, although the Jazz in that era were running a lot of pick and rolls and had a lot of things they did off the pick and roll because everybody knows what's coming. It's just how often can you execute it anyway?
Yeah.
You don't score. It's not 100%. No one scores every time down the floor. How often can you execute it? They know what we're doing, and we know what they're doing, and we know the counters And they know the counters, and now just do it.
And the truth is, that's maybe what has hurt the Thunder. The Thunder are clearly a good team. I mean, they're in the finals. They're also only 3 games away from winning a title, and very well still may win the championship. But they are gimmicky is impolite. But
that is impolite, by the way.
But the turnover-based defense that they have, which is entirely generated on the idea that if we can create turnovers and get easy baskets the other way, that's going to be the best offense we can get. And they're right. But when you are scouted better, when people start taking advantage of the weaknesses that Case and Wallace actually does have, or Lou Dort actually does have, or Caruso actually does have, and you don't turn the ball over, all of a sudden their defense is not as threatening as it felt throughout the regular season when you cannot prepare for them because you're on your 3rd game in 5 nights and the team you just played plays nothing like them. But now you prepare to play that style. You know you have to take care of the ball a little bit better. The focus is higher, and they are not as potent as they felt in the regular season where they only lost 1 game to the Eastern Conference, and now they've lost 2 in 6 days.
We had a story break this morning, and then it was recalled. And then it broke again. You want to weigh in on a little BYU hoops?
Sure. We've actually got a couple of Big 12 basketball schedules come out. I think Utah released theirs as well. There must have been a moratorium on when you could release
a moratorium. I found it interesting that the Big 12, when they go, I wish they'd play 20 games. More conference games is good because there's so many bad non-conference games. Now, I mean, said that, BYU has loaded up their non-conference schedule. But I wish they played 20 instead of 18. I like the rivalry element. I like seeing teams play a second time, maybe a third in the conference tournament. I'm up for all of that. But, man, the Big 12 is clearly scheduling for TV. You play everybody once, and then you have to play 3 teams twice to get to 18, right? 16-team league. So play everybody once, that's 15 games. Where do you get your other 3? Well, you play the rivals, so of course BYU and Utah are going to play twice. And then they gave BYU Arizona and Texas Tech. Okay, Arizona's a brand name, and Texas Tech has so much oil money now. They're going to be stacked. Right. I mean, they didn't give them a second game with Houston.
Sure.
But you can't play everybody. But they made sure they created 2 more good games for TV. Games that ultimately may not mean anything because these teams are both going to the NCAA tournament, so maybe it'll impact seeding a little bit.
You would hope so.
You would hope so, yes.
You never know. You know what, with transfers, with new faces coming in, with the reliance on 2 very young players, 1 extremely young player, even though he should be very good. Yeah, but, man, there are top 10 picks, lots of them, right? Oklahoma and Texas, bubble teams. Top 10 picks. Rutgers, 2 top 10 picks. Not a bubble team. Missed the tournament by a wide margin. A lot, yeah. Yeah, no, I'm...
So you're asking 18-year-olds who maybe have played up 1 year to suddenly play up 3 or 4 years. And playing those older guys messes them up. And Locke's been really big on, hey, careful, these 22 and 23-year-olds are beating up on 18 and 19-year-olds.
And they want to. They want to beat you up.
They want to do that. I mean, the University of Houston wants to do that, and Samson wants to do it, right? And Auburn wants to do it, and Iowa State wants to do it. On down the line, all these good teams want to do it. But the pros have to be careful because, now you're going to be 23, and there's going to be a 31-year-old who's going to be messing with you next year. So good luck with that because now you're going to play up 5, 8, 10, 12 years, depending on who you're matched up with.
I am excited for BYU's season, not just because of the A.J. DiBonsa aspect of it, which is obviously the biggest draw, and that's why they are on national TV. That's why they do have the non-conference schedule they have. It is why I agree with you. The Big 12 said, well, let's get as many games against Arizona as we possibly can, and then hopefully they match up in the conference tournament again. But I also want to see how BYU handles having a target on their back every game. Everybody is going to want to go and show out against BYU, and rightfully so. BYU has placed its own target on their back. You spend $7 million on a player, however they got A.J. DiBonsa on campus, whatever the actual dollar sign was. But everybody knows when they've got the number 1 pick on their schedule or is coming to their arena or they're going to play them at their arena and they want to embarrass them. So I want to see how BYU handles that. Now, BYU's really good outside of A.J. DiBonsa and Wright, who's coming over from Baylor. Richie Saunders is very good.
Saunders back, obviously, yeah.
And Keba Keita might be the most important player on the roster. In all honesty, just having a very
physical
reliable
presence,
big guy who rebounds.
Go get some boards and get some second shot attempts,
athletic.
right?
It's like there's value there. So BYU should be really good.
He'll finish easy buckets in traffic.
Yeah, and he should have even more space,
than he had last year. Get the team into the bonus.
So I think this BYU roster is really good, but even now they have a much bigger target on their back than they did last year. And last year they had Yegor Demon. And look, players wanted to embarrass him. And it stretches they did. Because even though he's played professionally, it's hard to be 18 years old playing against 22-year-olds who know how this league specifically is played. And yes, AJ has some physical advantages over the rest of these players. He's not like, you hear people say like LeBron. It's like he doesn't have LeBron's physique. I've seen him up close. I've stood next to him. He's great. He's got a great body. He's long. He looks better than every other 18-year-old you see. He does not have the body of some of these 22 and 23-year-olds still because he's 18.
Right.
He's a kid.
And he's going to get a big old dose of big time right away. Mm-hmm. Villanova and UConn, Wisconsin, that's all in November. Miami, Georgetown, I think I got Clemson later on now.
Yeah.
They have... I've seen this stuff, have they bitten off more than they can chew? I think there's some in the D News on that. I'm like, I don't want to criticize them for this. I mean, the answer to that might be yes, but don't criticize them. We've all wanted people to play schedules like this, and they're playing one.
And the tournament committee rewards you for it.
They will.
They're happy you're playing this. And BYU's going to beat some of those teams.
So how come the football, they can't do it, and basketball can? Football just doesn't weigh in strength of schedule. Loss!
Right.
Move them down.
Yeah.
2!
You're down.
You're out. Until they went to 12, and Ohio State got in. Ohio State wouldn't have been in a 14 playoff. Ohio State wouldn't have won the title.
Yeah,
There's no way they would have been in.
BYU's home-only games this year in conference, Arizona State, Colorado, Houston. It's a big advantage, not having to go and play down at Houston. Iowa State, TCU, Central Florida.
That Iowa State game last year was great there. That was a great game there.
Yeah, it was. Iowa State's a weirdly good team late in games, and showed it in that game as well. Away-only games, Baylor, Cincinnati, Kansas, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, West Virginia. Tough away schedule. Tougher away schedule than I think advantageous home schedule.
Oklahoma State used to be a really good basketball program. It was for a long time. Mm-hmm. And it is way down now. We've had Barry Trammell on. He's like, he's been covering it for decades. He's like, the Thunder came and college basketball just dropped off the map. It's not what it was at all. Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, between them, they had Final Four teams, a ton of Sweet 16 teams. It's just not the same. And I know the Utes went there, lost a game that they should have won last year, and it didn't seem like there were 5,000 people there. It was really a smattering of people.
It's always easy to look at the teams locally and ask, why didn't you build off of that momentum? And, a lot of Utah fans have done it with Alex Smith, and why didn't you get another NFL quarterback for such a long time after him? Or why didn't Larry Kraskowiak find more success after having Jakob Poeltl and DeLon Wright and Kyle Kuzma? Like, how did that not turn into more players? It happens everywhere. Look at Oklahoma State. They've had number 1 overall picks in Cade Cunningham. They had Marcus Smart, who was the player of the year and went back to school. He skipped being the number 1 overall pick to go back to school to be in that 2014 draft that had Andrew Wiggins and Jabari Parker and Joel Embiid and Dante Exum. Everyone knew he wasn't going to be the number 1 overall pick, but he went back to school to continue to play at Oklahoma State. And he still went top 10. It was probably advantageous for him. But, to that point...
He was 6, wasn't he? I think he was.
Yeah, I think he was 6. He went right after Dante. And they haven't really created a lot of NBA talent off of it other than Cade Cunningham, who I already mentioned, who was the number 1 overall pick. And then since then, they're not irrelevant, but they're certainly not anything to write home about. And Oklahoma, every once in a while, including this year, has a top 10 pick.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'm looking forward to it. That's a lot of big games. That is a lot of big games for BYU.
I'm sure you guys didn't do it because you guys are a little bit more responsible than I've been in my radio career, which is why you guys have been doing this for 20 years and I've made so many stops. But
I don't think that's why you've made so many stops.
It's worth talking about college basketball every game now, which is just not the case for a while here.
It definitely was not the case.
It was not worth tracking game to game, and now it is. When
I started working, it was really important. Utah and BYU were both good, and then BYU went down, and then BYU came back, and Utah slipped a little and was still pretty good. But, yeah, college basketball really took a hit the last 10 years. Mm-hmm. Post-Jimmer, it was lean out there. I didn't really think Ute fans Larry had 2 good NCAA tournament teams, and Ute fans were starting to embrace him, but it wasn't like the place had 15,000 was rocking, They'd be playing, and there'd be 10,000 people there, and we had a photo like, where are all the Ute fans? And fans would get all mad.
Yeah.
And then eventually it wasn't even that.
And I don't think that's getting fixed this year. The attendance.
Well, it'll be a process. We'll see if progress is made. I don't think it's going to be 15,000 every night.
It's definitely not going to be.
Will progress be made?
Yeah, that's what Alex Jensen's got to do. And
right.
I'm kind of intrigued by the roster he's put together. Then again, it's a bunch of transfers, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. So we'll see if...
But what they had a year ago, if they had defended well as a team, I think they could have been an NCAA tournament team. I think, and if the non-conference schedule had been built a little better, they gave up quite a bit there.
If they'd held on to Keita, they might have been a tournament team.
That was not possible. Between the money and the assistant coach changing, that wasn't. I mean, I guess if you want to get mad at somebody, you can, but there was nothing that was going to be done about that.
TJ, thanks for hanging out.
Anytime.
Top 3 stories coming up next. Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I present...
This is JJ and Alex.
Joining us on the program right now, John Wilner, college football writer for Mercury News.
What are some of the issues and concerns about that 5+11 model that gives a lot of people pause?
Well, I think that it gives the selection committee an immense amount of power. They're picking 11 spots. There are a lot of reasons to be wary of the selection committee. I mean, your state is one of the big ones, right? Because I think BYU got totally hosed. That is a sentiment a lot of people feel could get repeated every year if the committee is allowed to pick most of the field. One corner is distrust of the selection committee. Another corner is the need for more money because of revenue sharing. And the third corner is that ESPN isn't on the hook to pay more if they expand the playoff. So they can't just get more money by expanding the playoff.
Catch JJ and Alex afternoons from 3 to 6. Presented by G2G Bars on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.